Indie Horror Junkie! Indie Horror Junkie!
Is he horror junkie?
Indie Horror Junkie!
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
Indie Horror Junkie.
We're a panic attack.
Indie Horror Junkie!
Indie Horror Junkies.
Indie Horror Junkie! Indie Horror Junkie!
It's the Indie Horror Junkie Podcast, your source for anything and everything indie horror. Here's your host, Otis B. Dreads.
All right, here we go. 8 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. Do you know where your indie horror is at? It is right here. That's right. I went a little old school on the intro. Welcome, everyone. Got another great show tonight. Mr. Michael Gingold. I hope I pronounced that right. I did not clarify that in the beginning like I like to. Journalist does. Oh, man, we got so much to talk about. We were talking for about, 10 minutes or so before the show.
Hey, Barry.
But we got a good one tonight, man. We're going to talk all kinds. That's right.
Barry knows.
Yeah, Barry knows. Fangoria. That's definitely going to be brought up for sure. Before we get into that, of course, we're going to do a little indie horror junkie housekeeping.
House cleaning. What?
Housekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go with housekeeping. Of course, the new issue of the Indie Horror Junkie magazine coming out September 13th. And I got the cover here. I'd like to show the cover because it is one bad mammy jammy.
It is. We got a great spread on that new movie, Death of Snow White.
That's awesome. And as you can see, a little preview of what you'll get in this upcoming issue. And I believe this issue you can put in for a pre-order.
Mm-hmm.
Like to elaborate on that, how that works? When
Absolutely.
Can they get it and all that good stuff?
We've actually already sold out of the first run of the pre-order, so we went ahead and put in a second run just to cover up. This is the first issue that we're offering. You can go to the website, you can pre-order it, and I'm getting a list together. And what we did was, since this is the first time we're doing this, I'm doing something a little special, where once we get all the pre-orders done, once September 13th is hit, and the magazine is officially available, I'm going to grab the names of all the people who pre-ordered it before the 13th, and we're going to pick 5 names out of a hat. And those 5 people, when they get their copies in the mail, are going to get a little something extra in the envelope.
Little something.
Yep, so you can still get your order in.
And I hate surprises. my kids are little pranksters, so I hate surprises.
It'll be a good surprise.
It'll be a good surprise, yes. We also have a couple film festivals that we would like to talk about. First and foremost, the Indie Horror Junkie Film Fest. Again at MegaCon, I believe February 6th.
February 6th, 7th, and 8th, or 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, I believe it is, yeah.
Something of that nature. Submissions are open over there. You can go over to indiehorrorjunkie.com, hit the little Film Fest tab. You'll see it. It's such a great looking website. It's so easy to navigate. Even I can do it. Even a caveman can do it.
Nice,
right? And get your short, get your feature in. As you've seen, I mentioned it every show, as you see in the very beginning. You can see all the fun that we had, the Saska sisters, all the great cosplays. It was a wonderful time. And your film gets, seen by a lot of eyes. And that's really the benefit there. We also have the Mistress Mary's Festival. That's October 26th. But the 31st of this month here, boom, you're done with submissions. Cutting it off, baby. So we have to hurry up and get them in now. So you people can get their peepers on your film come the 26th. And where's that at again? I forget.
That's going to be held at the Cinema 6 in Port Richey. And if anybody's local and can come out to the event, we're going to have our very own Mistress Mary, which is our beautiful Haley Landon that's going to be out there greeting everybody for pictures and all kinds of stuff. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. And, I'm even entertaining the fact of maybe coming down myself for this one.
What? Another junkie in the house?
Maybe.
All right.
I'm working on it. I can't say anything for sure. I'm working on it though.
All right.
So what else do we have? Is that it for housekeeping?
That's pretty much it. The new issue coming out, the 2 film festivals. We're in the midst of still working on Nightmare Collection Volume 3, which will be out probably about the end of the year. It's actually going to be premiering at the Mistress Mary Film Festival, and then we'll have it out on physical media right after that. But other than that, let's get to our guest.
Let's get to him. Let's bring Michael on. Michael, welcome to the party.
Thank you very much. Happy to be on.
Awesome.
Happy to have you.
I don't even know where to start. I've got your IMDb up. I've got your Wikipedia. What's that?
Don't go too far back into the IMDb.
Well, there's still a lot of things. There's still a lot of things going on there. Where would you like to start? I don't know. Are you still editor in chief at Fangoria? Is that your title now, or just staff writer?
No, I'm a staff writer now. The magazine went through a whole bunch of trauma and then some changes. But I'm now a regular writer. I do an editorial every issue and a lot of film coverage, usually the independent stuff. I have a story on my good friend Scooter McRae's movie Black Eyed Susan coming up in the next issue. So I'm very excited. I've known Scooter forever, and I'm happy to be writing about his new movie in the pages of the next issue. Because I remember writing about one of his first movie years and years ago, back in the 90s. So it's been a long time and a lot of history there.
Yeah, so tell me, how did you first get into horror? When did it happen? I mean, was it at birth that you just kind of, they brought you into this world in the pages of some old horror magazine and it just kind of came through your pores? How did it happen, Mike? Explain to us.
Well, I kind of grew up at right about the right time. I was first into monster movies, and I especially loved the animated films of Ray Harryhausen. And I was actually on a vacation with my parents in upstate New York, and I found this magazine called Famous Monsters of Filmland. And it had Sinbad in the Eye of the Tiger on the cover. And I had never seen this magazine before. And to me, the idea that there's a magazine that covered this kind of stuff that I loved was a revelation. I was like 10 years old, immediately bought it, immediately started buying every issue. And then I started buying Starlog because, of course, I was a child of the Star Wars era and read Starlog religiously. And one day in 1978, they had an ad for a movie called Fantastica, which was going to be coming out. And it had Godzilla on the cover of the first issue. And Godzilla was my second love after Ray Harryhausen. So I was like, there's a magazine coming out and the first issue has Godzilla on the cover. I got to have this. So I subscribed. And then I waited, I guess it was 7 or 8 months while various legal stuff happened. I won't get into that whole story. I think the fans probably know it. And then it emerged the following spring as Fangoria. And that was right around the time I started seeing horror films in the theater. The first R-rated horror film I saw in a theater was Phantasm in the spring of '79. And then I saw Alien and Jaws on a reissue, and then Halloween, which just converted me forever. And, right around the time I was getting into horror, there was this magazine that started out as kind of a fantasy horror blend, and then as it went on, the fans clearly loved the horror content more, and so fantasy got phased out. I guess by the end of its first year, it was an all-out horror magazine, and I have every issue. I've worked on, a large majority of the issues over the years, and it's been a part of my life as far back as I can remember, practically.
Now, what a dream job, right? Growing up with all of those likes and interests, only to, write for somebody and work at Fangoria. I mean, that's a dream come true. What, as a young, as a little Mikey, what was the one movie that scared you or really stuck with you as a young child?
Oh, it was Halloween. Completely.
Halloween,
I
yeah.
saw it on its first re-release in October of '79, and it terrified me and made me love it. And I just became kind of obsessed with that movie and obsessed with John Carpenter. I think I saw Assault on Precinct 13 on TV not long after that. And amazingly, a syndicated station in New York on like a Sunday afternoon showed that movie uncut. Like all the violence, including the little girl getting shot, was completely uncut.
Wow.
And I just became John Carpenter was like my first idol as a filmmaker.
Yeah. I mean, I loved Halloween as well, but Halloween was probably the one movie that I could say, like you, that really got me and made me turn that corner to realize this is what I love. But in all honesty, I think my favorite John Carpenter film has to be The Fog. I fell in love with that movie. Maybe it's because of the circumstances it was when I saw it and everything, but I absolutely love that whole storyline and everything. And it's like, that's just stuck with me over the years.
Well, The Fog is a movie that just gets better every time I see it.
Yeah.
I know when it first came out, a lot of people kind of put it down because it was such a different kind of horror film from Halloween. I think everyone was expecting another really kind of, intense, scary, grab you by the throat kind of movie. And he made this very kind of elegant, atmospheric ghost story, which I don't think people were expecting. I mean, there are images in that movie. I think it has some of Dean Cundy's best cinematography in any John Carpenter film. It's beautiful to look at. And it gets pretty scary at times too. But yeah, I love that movie more every time I see it. I try to see it whenever I can on the big screen.
And I won't lie here, but I kind of live vicariously through you on Facebook, Mike, because I keep seeing you at all these incredible premieres and all these film screenings and stuff like that. It's just like, my God, I would love to be in that position every day over there hanging with filmmakers and watching these horror movies and then getting to write about it. It's like, what a life.
Well, that's one of the reasons I stuck around New York is, I went to film school in New York City, and that's where I started doing a Xerox fanzine in high school. And because there was no internet, and the only way to communicate with horror fans was by just writing up this little thing, Xeroxing it, and sending it around. And when I got to college in New York, I discovered that publicists would take me seriously as a journalist. And so I started I met this one publicist in particular named Jonathan Martyr in New York, who handled a lot of the B movies and exploitation films. And he was the first one who introduced me to Stuart Gordon and a whole bunch of people like that. I got to meet Sam Raimi when he came to town promoting Evil Dead 2. And, that kind of started me on the road that eventually led to Fangoria.
Well, that's kind of the way we started here with Indie Horror Junkie. I mean, I was doing Indie Horror Junkie, which was basically just like an online newsletter, because by running all these different film festivals and meeting all these filmmakers and getting all these films sent to me, I had so much content that I just loved writing and talking about that I did it basically online, putting it out there like that. Indie Horror Junkie's only been around for a little over a year now. We've gone from that little online newsletter to being a digital magazine to being now a print magazine. We do the weekly podcast. We have a film fest, and we're even creating our own original horror films. But what I enjoy the most about it is all the people I'm meeting. I like just the podcast here. A few weeks back, we had Larry Fessenden on. Are you familiar with Larry?
I love Larry Fessenden. He's
I do too.
Filmmakers and people. I did the cover story on his movie Blackout.
Yes.
Earlier this year. Unbelievably, the first time he was ever on the cover of Fango, it was a long time coming. He's one of my favorite people, like I said, and filmmakers that I know.
Yeah, we got and I've known him, and we've well, at least by Facebook and stuff like that for quite a while. So it was an honor to finally have him on there. And the conversation we had where we talked about Ty West, because I'm a huge Ty West fan, and he talked about bringing him up and him being under him. And now Ty West is with the X trilogy, which is amazing. So it was just, like I said, the people that we've been able to meet to get on the podcast here. I met the Saska sisters over at when we did our film festival last year, and they actually came all the way across the place to come check us out and hang with us over at our place for a little while. So just the people and the doors that it has opened with this magazine to meet all the people that I really love and look up to and want to help. I mean, the whole purpose behind Indie Horror Junkie magazine is to try and promote the little guys, what I call the blue collar filmmakers, the guys that are working 9-to-5 jobs, filming on the weekends at home, paying for their movies mostly with their own budget, hoping to one day be in Fangoria and be making studio films. We want to try and give them that exposure that, you know, the bigger magazines would give them that, you know, if they were with the studios. So we try to help as many people out as we can. And that has opened the door for me to meet some incredibly gifted and talented people that are going to be all over Fangoria in the very near future.
Oh, I hope so. I mean, one of the things that I kind of created for Fango back in the day was when shot on video movies started getting distribution and people across the country were getting to see them. I came up with a regular feature called Notes from the Underground, where and very low budget filmmakers would write their own articles about their experiences making their movies. And every story was different. That was the fun part. Every movie, every production was different. And they always came up with really interesting and also like sometimes cautionary tales, often just a lot of advice. And it was a way to get these entertaining stories, but also for kind of budding filmmakers to learn about what the experience was like making a movie on a very tiny budget that you're financing yourself. So I really kind of supported that and tried to get that into as many issues as possible.
God bless you, sir. Otis, you have anything?
You know, as a tell us about some of your experiences as a filmmaker, as it says, journalist, filmmaker. Although we might as well go right on down the line. What any recent projects? Some coming up that you can talk about?
Yeah, well, my specialty, I do a lot of Blu-ray featurettes for different companies, and my specialty is doing location featurettes. Where I go and I shoot, you know, where horror films were shot, and it's kind of like, here's how it is in the movie, here's how it is today, and just kind of tracking down all the places that these movies were filmed. I think I passed on some photos of some of the stuff I've done recently that's been out in the last year or so.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll bring up the photos that you sent us, and if you want to chime in about what each photo is, let's go ahead and do that now.
Sure.
Yeah, I see some. Okay, we'll start right here.
Yeah, this was my magnum opus. This is something that I'd wanted to do for a long time, which is a big feature on all of the New York City locations seen in Italian horror films in the 70s and 80s. You know, it's always like they start off in New York for about 10 minutes and then they fly down to the tropics or they fly down to the south or somewhere. But they always tried to get that, you know, extra production value by showing you know, some scenes in New York City. And so I went to dozens and dozens. This was a long project, but I went to all these different locations seen in different Italian horror films. This is obviously the Brooklyn Bridge, which you saw at the end of Zombie, Lucio Fulci's film, and also appears in a few other Italian horror films. In The House by the Cemetery, the family drives from the Washington Square Park area to Boston. No one making that drive would ever take the Brooklyn Bridge, but it made for a good shot. So they showed the car going across the Brooklyn Bridge at one point in that montage. So that was one of the key ones.
Next, while we're staying in New York Ripper location.
Yeah, this is the opposite end. This is the South Bronx. This is where one of the murder scenes in New York Ripper takes place. And, you know, the South Bronx was a pretty scary area back then, but when we went up to this area to shoot this, the people couldn't have been nicer that we ran into while we were shooting out on the street. So that's one of the things. The very first one of these that I did was for Chud, which shot in some of the grimiest, dirtiest areas of Lower Manhattan, and all of it's been gentrified now. I think that's still the one where there's the biggest contrast between the way it looks in the movie and the way it does now.
Amityville.
Oh yeah, this was great. Yeah, me and my creative partner Glenn Baisley, who shoots and edits a lot of this stuff, we went down to Toms River, New Jersey, and the real Amityville for a feature on the first three Amityville horror locations. That was for a disc that came out from 88 Films in England. And first we went to the real Amityville and got a few shots of the real house, which is kind of frowned upon, but we made it happen. So of course we had to get a picture, by the Village of Amityville sign here.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, Jacob's Ladder location.
Yeah, can we go to the poster first for Jacob's Ladder?
Oh, absolutely. Here we go.
Yeah, so there's the famous final scene from Jacob's Ladder as seen in the poster. And now if we go back, that's my good friend Carl Mazzella, who has helped out on a lot of these shoots. I managed to track down the house in New Jersey where they shot a lot of the interiors for Jacob's Ladder, including that staircase, and we got to recreate the scene from Jacob's Ladder in the real place. So that was one of my kind of great bucket list moments there.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have City of the Dead location.
City of the Living Dead. This is one of the things I'm most proud of. This was for that Italian horror locations featurette. And if you go online, you'll find a lot of people saying that the famous scene where Christopher George pickaxes the coffin to get Catriona McCall out of there was shot at Calvary Cemetery in Queens. And we found out it was not. I was able to find it was a different cemetery in Queens. And this is me lying on the exact spot where that coffin was that Christopher George hacked Catriona McCall out of in that movie.
Wow.
So that was another kind of bucket list location that I was able to track down.
All right. That was all the location pictures. We'll start up here at the top, ad nauseum.
Yeah, this is
there's
yeah,
The Exorcist. What's that?
Do you have the cover there?
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
That one. There we go.
Yeah, that's a project that I'd wanted to do for decades, really. I've been collecting newspaper ads for horror films since 1979 when I first started getting into them. I just became this like obsessive collector. Like every Friday when the paper would come out and there'd be ads for the latest horror films, I'd cut them out and file them away for every one that I could. And then several years back, Dave Alexander was looking to do some Rue Morgue branded books and hooked me up with 1984 Publishing. And we wound up doing the first edition of Ad Nauseum, which covered my stuff from the 80s. And then a couple of years ago, we expanded it, and I mostly from online sources added a whole bunch of stuff from the 1970s. So that's what this is now. It's a huge compendium. It's kind of the history of horror films through their newspaper advertising. And some of it is pretty fascinating.
I thought I was the only one that did that because when I was younger, I used to collect those photo albums. And every time the newspaper came out, like you did, I would cut out the ad for all the horror movies and I'd put them in these photo albums. And I had like 6 or 7 photo albums full of all these ads until I lost a couple of them. And that's what got me off and just figured, forget it.
Oh, it's been so wonderful. I've heard that from so many people. So many people have come up to me and said that they did the same thing. And, I guess it was a way to kind of preserve your memories of seeing the film, or as a substitute for seeing I started doing that before I was old enough to see a lot of these movies in the theater. So, and it was cheaper than buying the posters. So, it was a way to have a little piece of the movie in your collection. And
let me I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you first.
I was gonna say, I had a question. Now that you brought that up, it reminded me of something that for years I've thought about. Like I told you, I was a huge fan of The Fog. I remember one day walking into the theater to see something, I forget what it was, and seeing a poster on the wall for Beyond the Fog. Mm-hmm. And I always thought like, oh my God, that's finally a sequel to my favorite movie. And it never came out. And I was like, what the heck was that about?
That ad is in the book. That was actually a reissue of a movie that was originally called Horror on Snape Island and Tower of Evil. It first came out in 1972. And then it really kind of funny because some distributor, I forget which one, for whatever reason, took that movie, retitled it Beyond the Fog, and threw it out in 1981 or 2. And then I think literally the week before or after that in New York, someone released an Australian thriller called Snapshot as the day after Halloween. So there were these like ripoffs where they tried to make these movies seem like sequels when they were obviously not.
just trying to capitalize on the fandom of the other ones. I understand now. That makes sense.
Yeah, both of those are in the book. It's a prime example of how the ads lied to us when we were kids.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm definitely going to get that book now. I'm a huge 80s horror fan. I've got a whole selection back there of just 80s horror and 80s movies as well. But 80s horror is always, to me, that's always been the best decade of horror movies ever. I mean, there's some great movies that have come out now and a lot of great movies that came out in the 70s as well. But to me, maybe it was because I grew up during that age and we were living at the movie theater and stuff like that. But 80s horror has always been the big thing for me.
Yeah, there was so much stuff. And it's interesting that a lot of people kind of define 80s horror as the slasher era. And there were a lot of slasher movies, but there was so much other good stuff out there too. That's one thing. If you look through the book, there's such a great variety. There's werewolves and ghosts and all kinds of odd stuff like the Phantasm films and every kind of supernatural movie you can imagine. There's art house horror. I mean, I tried to collect every single ad for every movie that opened in the New York area. So there's a really big variety of stuff. If you want to throw up the pages, I can point out a few of the things that I have in there.
Well, before we do that, we have a question on the thing there.
Yeah, Dean had a quick question. Any basket case stories?
Oh man, I did not see Basket Case when it first came out because it only played midnights originally, and it played in Manhattan. And I was too young to go into Manhattan and see midnight movies at that age. So I had to wait till it came out on video, and I saw it that way.
Ah, there you go. There's a little story for you. All right, let's get and bring up your pages.
All right, some pages here.
I later did do some extras for the Basket Case Blu-ray that Arrow Video put out. So I eventually got
nice.
Including an interview. My favorite one was an interview with Joe Bob Briggs about his history with Basket Case, which we shot near the theater, originally the Waverly. It's now the IFC Center, where Basket Case first opened in Manhattan all those years ago.
And that's on the Blu-ray?
Yeah.
All right, because I've got the Blu-ray. I guess I didn't look at that. I'm going to have to check that out now.
I think they just put out a 4K that would also have that on there.
Nice. All right, let's show your pages here. Let's you talk about them a little bit.
So this is one of the cool things about getting all these ads together is not I don't have just the classic ads that people are familiar with, but kind of the variant ads and the secondary ads that came out to promote these movies. And so we have here one ad for The Exorcist saying, okay, it's opening in more theaters, so you don't have to wait online. I know you've been hearing there are big lines and you can't get in, but we assure you, it'll be easier to get in. And then I guess there was a rumor going around that when the movie got its wider release, it was going to be edited. And so they took out an ad reassuring people that not one frame has been cut out of the version of The Exorcist that is playing all around the New York area. So those are the kinds of fun little variant ads I really like getting into the book.
Very cool.
That's funny. Nightmare on Elm Street.
This is just a sample of like what you get in the 80s. You have a bigger film like Nightmare on Elm Street, which was a low budget film comparatively, but it was very high profile. And then you also had things like The Being and The Dorm That Drip Blood, which kind of open from smaller companies. They play for a week in one city and then move on to the next.
Very cool.
And the other thing you can see I did there and here also was I've also collected reviews of horror films ever since I was a kid. And so I went back and I found sample reviews of a lot of the key titles. And it's kind of surprising. Some of the films got better reviews than you might have expected. Some of them got worse. There's a fun section on Silent Night, Deadly Night, which got probably the worst reviews of any horror film in history. So that was another fun thing, is finding some of the best reviews of these movies to excerpt for the book.
That's funny with this particular review here. Stephen Hunter from the Baltimore Sun. That's my neck of the woods. It's I grew up out that way. That's funny.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Next in line, Black Christmas. Silent Night, Evil Night. Yeah.
Well, again, this kind of shows the history of the film. Every so often, I would put in ads from other cities to kind of show the history of the movie. Black Christmas opened in Canada first under that title, but then Warner Brothers, the distributor, which put out a lot of blaxploitation films, said, well, we call it Black Christmas, people might think it's a blaxploitation film. So they originally called it Silent Night, Evil Night, with the ad on the upper left with a Christmas ornament. And then they changed the ad, as you see on the lower right. And then when it finally got to New York, it was back to Black Christmas.
I
Wow.
love it.
Yeah. That's pretty wild.
Is there another one? No. And all those are in Ad Nauseum, the first one?
Yeah, this is all from the first, because I also did Ad Nauseum 2, which covers the 90s and the 2000s. And then I did one called Ad Astra, which covers sci-fi in the 80s and 90s. And that one's really fun because it covers all the Star Wars films and Back to the Future and also cult stuff like Tank Girl. There's a lot of fun and crazy advertising for the sci-fi films too. Road Warrior, all its imitators, Terminator, all of its imitators. So you get to kind of look at the ads in Ad Astra and see how these trends kind of came up and then went away as the 80s and 90s went on.
And where can we get those books? Amazon or any?
Amazon, though I think the the cheapest place to get them is at 1984publishing.com. You can get them on sale there too, and I think that's the cheapest place you can buy them.
Okay, absolutely, excellent. All right, so you said that now you're still writing for Fangoria, and you're doing basically a section just on the independent filmmakers, right?
Well, no, that was in Fango's original incarnation.
Oh, okay.
To about the mid 2010s, I guess, before it went through a succession of new owners, and now the focus is a little different. So I know they do still cover grassroots stuff in there, but not quite the same way.
Okay. All right. What is your experience with these independent horror filmmakers? I mean, give me a little lowdown on, because you've obviously covered everything from the indies through the studio films and stuff, but give us your impressions, maybe some of the filmmakers that you've met, some of their efforts and stuff like that to get what they do and eventually, become part of that studio circuit and well known.
Well, there's so many. I mean, there's so many different kinds of independent films. Back in the 80s when I was first seeing these films and reading Fangoria, an independent film was something made for under $1 million and done as a grassroots kind of thing. And you needed a certain amount of money to do it because you were shooting on film. Even shooting a movie on 16, you needed to spend, 5 figures to get it in the can. Like, right. I think Basket Case was like $25,000 to shoot on 16. Evil Dead was like $90,000, before getting all the 35 post-production to get them into theaters. And now, you can shoot a movie for a lot less than that digitally. I mean, the things you can do digitally for almost, I mean, you still have to light it, make it look good. But if you do it right, you can, you can spend a lot less than that and turn out something really, really professional looking. But, there's so many different kinds of independent films. For example, Nightmare on Elm Street was an independent film. New Line was an independent company, but by the time of the third Elm Street, they were releasing movies nationwide, just like the studios. In fact, I remember a while back, I got a press release about the biggest grossing independent films of last year. And you had stuff like Twilight and the latest Resident Evil movie, because technically they're not studio films, but they might as well be because they're using the same kind of resources. But the stuff that I have always really loved is the stuff, grassroots filmmakers or filmmakers working in kind of the $500,000 to say $2 or $3 million range, who are making stuff that is a lot cheaper than the studios, but a lot more personal and in a lot of cases a lot more interesting.
Yeah. I mean, just to talk about Godzilla, like you talked about, I've been a huge Godzilla fan all my life. I've seen every movie. I've got the whole Toho collection back there and all that stuff. But then Godzilla -1 comes out. They did that for, what was it, 15 million, I think it was? And to me, it was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, well, movies in overseas generally cost less than they do in Hollywood. I mean, that's true in Europe. I've seen a lot of European films, which look amazing. And then I hear what the budget was, and it was a fraction of what your typical equivalent studio movie cost. But yeah, I love Godzilla movies. The old ones, even some of the newer ones, some of the Hollywood ones I like. The latest one, not quite so much, but the original Gareth Edwards Godzilla, I think, is really great. I love that whole kind of ground level approach to shooting. I mean, I know some people complain because you didn't see enough of Godzilla, but I liked kind of taking that street level approach to shooting the monster scenes.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one as well. I'm a huge Gareth Edwards fan. I mean, everything that he's done. I mean, look what he did with Rogue One. I mean, to me, I thought that they were going to burn out with Star Wars, and he makes Rogue One, which was maybe to me my favorite movie of all. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of his.
But talking about indies, I mean, my favorite filmmakers are people like Larry, who's been out there. He's kind of been in the trenches, like going after the financing. I mean, to me, he's the guy that, like, the A24s and the Neons and the Shutter should be beating it down his door to back his movies, but he's still got to struggle to get the financing for each new movie. And
Yeah.
all the stuff that every single one, it turns out it's interesting. It's got really cool ideas. He has his own thoughts about certain genres, like Blackout is his take on werewolves, which is very different. He did Depraved, which is his Frankenstein film. The first movie of his that I saw was Habit, which was his take on a vampire film that was very personal and interesting. And now he's doing his own Monsterverse movie and putting those three characters together. And I cannot wait to see what that turns out looking like.
He's doing that? I can't believe he didn't tell me. And the person we're talking about is Larry Fessenden. We had talked about him, just to let everybody know, because we had talked about him off the air. But yeah, I saw Blackout. I purchased it as well on that. We talked about it on the show because I'm a huge werewolf fan. I wrote my own film script called Lycanthrope that I'm hoping to one day make, and we talked about that as well. So when we talked about Blackout at length, and I went ahead and I got that as well. But I'm a huge fan of Larry's. Like for all the reasons you said too. I mean, he's a good actor, he's a great filmmaker, but he just seems like such a great guy and the kind of guy that you want to see succeed. And I know, like you said, he's working hard to do it, but he's having a lot of struggles as well.
Yeah, and he's also backed so many good filmmakers like Ty West. I mean, I remember seeing The Roost at a screening in New York City years ago, and it had no fanfare. It was in a kind of a Halloween showcase of a bunch of different movies, and I saw it and I was like, that's really cool. This movie clearly, again, made for very little money, but this filmmaker really has an interesting approach to it. And it was kind of cool. I mean, one of the great things about being at Fango so long is seeing early films of some of these filmmakers and then watching them ascend. And I think there's no better example of when I first heard about this movie called Kronos by a Mexican filmmaker named Guillermo del Toro, and seeing that for the first time and thinking this, another variation on the vampire theme, that's really cool and personal and interesting. And then just watching him ascend to like the upper ranks of Hollywood was really exciting.
Yeah, I'm a big Del Toro fan, like In the Shape of Water and a bunch of different things. I mean, amazing guy. So tell us a little bit about what you think some of the struggles that some of these independent filmmakers are having, as opposed to being able to, not just for getting funding, but getting films seen by distributors and stuff like that. I mean, we could talk about distributors all day long and some of the horror stories that I've heard about that, but tell me your thoughts on what you think I guess the landscape is looking like now and where you think it might be going.
Well, it seems like about every 5 years, people are kind of ringing the death knell for independent filmmaking in general and horror in particular. I've been on panels about that at film festivals for the last probably 20 years. And then somehow or other, people keep on doing it. I go to the Fantasia Film Festival every year. Excuse me, that's my favorite festival. And every year, there are independent filmmakers out there getting the money together somehow, getting these great films out there. Again, I think distribution is a big problem because now that you have streaming, you have an endless, I'm trying to think of an endless environment to put these movies out into. And literally every week, there's 2 or 3 independent horror films coming out on streaming, some very grassroots and some larger, like, the A24 level stuff. And it's so hard to kind of get yourself noticed that way. And sometimes it happens almost by accident, like in the case of Skinamarink, which only became a sensation because somebody bootlegged it and people started seeing it online and saying, wow, this movie's really scary. And, then it got distribution and it got out there. Half the people who saw it were like, what the hell, this movie, nothing happens. But for the people who appreciate it, I'm one of the people who really got into the very weird, creepy, suggestive vibe of it. And, you never know when or how something's going to break out. I mean, my favorite horror movie last year was a movie called Raging Grace, which I saw at Fantasia, loved it. It did get distribution on streaming, but it never really, it didn't get that breakout where, through whatever reason, a mass audience kind of discovered it. And another movie called Herd, which is a really good kind of zombie drama. It's not really a gore fest. It's more about the people involved. But it's such a smart and dramatic, and it's full of character and some good zombie stuff. And again, I loved it. I did everything I could to promote those 2 films. Somehow, they didn't quite get the traction that they deserved. So, part of my thing when I'm writing about the independent films is finding the stuff that I think is really good and special and trying to get it out there and promote it.
Okay.
It's kind of what we do here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anything that we can do to shine a light on any independent filmmakers and some of their great projects, I mean, we're all for it, whether it be through the magazine, the podcast, or anything. I mean, we want more people to see this work because, like you said, there's some amazing work out there. And I think what really gets it to me, because being a filmmaker and being in that same situation as most of these people, I understand the struggles. I know about working a 9 to 5 job, and I know about saving up money and how hard it is to get anybody to give you any money to get stuff done, and how many hats you have to wear during a production. It's not like a studio film where you've got a person in every single position handling every single aspect. A lot of times, even though you're a director, you're sitting there, you're handling craft services and being a PA and everything else, driving people around. It's just, that's part of it. But you're not doing it for the money per se. You're doing it because it's in your heart and this is what you want to do. Films are going to outlive us. I love the idea of being able to one day, no longer being here, but still having something out there that's got my name all over it, that was done by me, out there being seen by a whole new generation, and maybe catching on with somebody, maybe somebody seeing it and saying, like, because I saw this movie, it affected me to where I wanted to go and do my own. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we live for. So it's not about the money, but I think also by not being in that studio, situation or whatever, you're able to be a lot more creative. You know that you've got to do something different. You've got to do something unique, something that's going to get people's attention, as opposed to just doing Screen 12 or whatever it is that's going to be happening or whatever, because you've got a fan base and you want to try and bring tickets in and you got to justify the budget and stuff. You're in a position where you can try and do something new and take chances and not have to worry about, your movie going through the studios and getting all hacked up and re-edited and something else all entirely coming out,
Yeah, I I'm kind of on two kinds of thinking about that, because I have to say there is a lot of imitative stuff that comes out of the indie scene also. I mean,
That's
how
true.
many times have we seen people remaking Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Night of the Living Dead or whatever, in their backyards, or, God bless them for putting in the effort. But, the ones that I tend to gravitate towards are the ones that, even if they're taking on a traditional idea, they put a new twist on it. Like Herd is the umpteenth zombie film, but they find a new way into it in terms of the characters, so that they have a familiar idea, but they do something different and personal and interesting with it. And I also want to point out, I also do a lot of coverage for Rue Morgue. Also, I contribute to their website almost daily. I do reviews there, and again, there I try to push like the interesting independent films that I come across. It's so tough, man, because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
Today I literally got like 5 or 6 press releases for new horror films that are coming out on streaming, and it becomes tough to keep up with it all. It's a glutted marketplace, and so God bless the people who were able to kind of break through that. Another group that I really enjoy their stuff is the Addams Family, John Adams and Toby Poser and Lulu and Zelda Adams. They did Hellbender and The Deeper You Dig and Where the Devil Roams, and they just have a new movie called Hellhole that's out on Shudder, which is kind of their variation on a creature feature a la The Thing, but it's again put a very kind of quirky personal touch to it. And they're doing these small films where they're investing a lot of heart and a lot of imagination into them, and that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy.
No, I'm gonna have to look them up because we need to get them in the magazine. They sound like somebody I definitely want to get to know.
Oh yeah, and every one of their movies is different, is the thing. Like Hellhole is nothing like Where the Devil Roams, which is not much like Hellbender. They all have that kind of quirky, idiosyncratic feel to them, but each one, like Hellbender is like a modern family drama about witchcraft. Where the Devil Roams is a period film set at a carnival. Hellhole is shot in Serbia, and it's a creature feature with lots of practical tentacles and things in it. They're always doing something different every time, which is one of the things I enjoy the most about them.
I definitely am going to look them up. Let me ask you something else now that we've been talking and it came to my mind. What are your thoughts on fan films?
I have to say I don't see enough of them to really. I know they're kind of an important part of the landscape, but there's so much stuff to cover. I haven't seen a lot of them, so I don't want to comment too directly. The one thing I can talk about is the bigger fan service movies we've been getting. I mean, I know a lot of people liked Alien Romulus, but to me, by the end, it was just too much of the fan service and not enough taking it into some kind of different territory. And I'm finding that with a number of films lately outside the genre. The new Beverly Hills Cop was the same way. It was just like nostalgia bait the entire time. And I think there's a balance you have to strike. Again, I haven't seen enough of the fan films, so I can't really comment on them intelligently, I'm afraid. But I appreciate the enthusiasm behind them, and if it can lead people to kind of hone their craft on familiar material and then maybe strike out into their own thing. I remember years ago I was asked to speak in front of a little college film class, and they asked me if I had any advice, and I said, if you're making a horror film, don't make it like other movies. Don't try to make the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because when Tobe Hooper made it, he wasn't trying to make the next anything. He was doing his own thing. And the way you really get attention, I think, is you do your own thing. And it's a risk. It may not work. People might not respond. But if they do, then it's something that comes from you, and it's not you trying to take, the old tropes and just recycle them.
That's a great piece of advice. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I've made myself a fan film. I made the Halloween Death Walks Among Us, which was a kind of a Michael Myers fan film, but we went and we added Freddy Krueger and we added Jason and we did a whole bunch of things and kind of made our own little monster universe. I didn't really want to do it, but I had friends of mine that loved that so much. And to me, I did it for two reasons. One, because I just love to make movies and I love to work with people and love to be on set. So I did it because of that. But I also said that, hey, if we're going to do this, I don't want to do a scene for scene remake of something. I mean, John Carpenter did it flawlessly in my book. Why would I try and improve on that? Let's do something different. Let's take this particular set of characters or whatever and put them in a different situation. Let's tweak it around a little bit. I think a lot of independent filmmakers are leaning towards doing stuff like that. Like I have a friend of mine, Peter Anthony, who made a very successful Friday the 13th fan film series. And I think what they're doing is they're doing that because it's a known property. So therefore they've got a built-in fan base. They know they're going to get eyes on it, but it's a chance to say, okay, now that we've got this audience, let's take something a little bit different. Let's make something a little unique, but show them our skill level as filmmakers and also our skill level as storytelling using a known entity that are going to get people automatically to look at it. So I think they're using it as a way like that, as opposed to trying to rip off, Friday the 13th or anything like that. I think they grew up and loving, like me. I would never make Halloween to try and rip off John Carpenter. John Carpenter's a god to me. It's because of him I'm doing what I'm doing. So to me, it's an homage to him. But if I'm going to do that, let me also show people what we can do. And what if we did this? And what if we did that? So I think it's great fun, but it's not cost effective because everything you spend on that you can't make back. You can't monetize that because it's a known property, and I wouldn't want to. To me, that's where you try to steal from somebody or take away from somebody's if you're going to try and make money off it. To me, we did it, put it straight on YouTube, made it free for everybody to see, so people who are fans of that film, that genre, whatever it is, will have a little something else. I've had people watch my movie and say that they enjoyed it so much and they've never seen the original Halloween. To me, that's unbelievable. That's like, really? How does that even possible? But they've gone and watched it because of my fan film, and that's like fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing is that I believe I'm a little older than most of my contemporaries in the fan scene. I mean, I'm 57. I was 12 years old, like I said, when Halloween first came out. And I think that gives me kind of a different perspective. I actually wrote about this in my editorial in the next Fangoria. It's like, Halloween is my favorite horror film. I'll always hold it close to my heart, but I am done with new Halloween stuff. There was that announcement that Miramax is doing more movies and they're creating a shared universe and I'm just like, stop, enough.
Yeah.
Everything that has been done. I mean, to me, it would have been wonderful if they had ended with Halloween 3. They wrapped it up. They wrapped up the Michael Myers story in 2. 3 was a great variation. I wish they could have gone on and do what Carpenter wanted to do and do Halloween 4, 5, 6 each as a different movie about Halloween. At this point, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of, because most of them I've not liked. Halloween H20 I like quite a bit. Most of the other sequels and the remake, like Rob Zombie's first Halloween remake, I also enjoyed. But I mean, again, I've been around long enough that I've seen it. Like Alien is the same way. Alien and Aliens are terrific. I love them both. The sequels are a mixed bag all the way down the line. I like Prometheus quite a bit because that did try to do something different. But there's a part of me that's just like, enough already. The stories have been told. And I think Terminator is the franchise where it really showed the last couple of films the strain of trying to continue that story.
Yeah.
The last couple of them, The most recent one had some really good stuff in it, but in both cases, it's like neither of these movies is necessary.
Yeah.
I'd much rather see more original stuff come out than, but everything is IP these days because the studios don't think anything else can make money. I mean, how many sequels did we get just this summer? Some good, some bad. There were very few original, because people say, oh, well, all sequels were the only thing that made money. It's like, well, that's because it's the only thing that was out there.
Yeah.
So, I'm all for people kind of celebrating their love for something and making the fan films. But as far as like the actual movies are concerned, I'm done with Halloween. I'm gonna have the original and 2 and 3 and NH20, which I like, and I don't need any more new ones. Maybe it's heretical to say that as a horror fan, but it's like, give me the next Halloween, give me the next thing that is going to reshape the genre the way Halloween did, or
Right.
the next Blair Witch Project, or the next whatever it's going to be.
I thought the
Yeah,
last one
and
to
it
me,
doesn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I thought the last one that was going to reshape the horror genre to me was Cabin in the Woods. I mean, that just like turned everything on its head as far as I was concerned. I loved that movie.
And that was the kind of thing that's kind of like a big 40-50 million dollar whatever it cost fan film. I mean, that was just them pouring their love for every kind of horror into this one film, and yet making it really work as a story, getting everything in there in a way that made sense. And I would love to see more stuff like that, and more Halloween films like Trick or Treat, which is a great Halloween that has nothing to do with Michael Myers. So, more Halloween films that are not Michael Myers. That's what I'd like to see.
We have a question here. Dean Blackwelder here wanted to know, and this is probably going to be an almost impossible question for you to answer, Mike. Okay, what is your favorite horror movie? If you were going to get stranded on a deserted island with a VCR and one tape,
Halloween.
what would it be?
It would still be Halloween, man. That's still my favorite. And it's funny because I don't think when I watch it now, it doesn't work on me as well as it did once. Like I saw, check that out. Nice.
Yep.
Like a while back, I saw a double feature of Halloween and The Thing. Halloween doesn't quite work the way it once did. The Thing feels like it was made last week. It's still amazing and relevant and scary, but my heart belongs to Halloween. That was the one that launched me into the world of horror. It's still a great movie just to look at and watch. So I don't know if I'd say it's the best horror film, but my favorite emotionally is still Halloween, the first one.
Yeah, I would probably have to say the same thing. I would watch Halloween over and over again, and I don't think I could ever get tired of it. Everything, the atmosphere, the music, just the whole mythos behind it and everything. Jamie Lee Curtis, the shape, the whole storyline behind the William Shatner mask and all the stuff that I've learned and everything. I mean, it's just, you can never get old. But to me, I would have to say, if it's the scariest horror movie of all time, I mean, to me, you have to look back at The Exorcist. And the reason I say that is because that's a movie that was done in the 70s, yet people today will still not watch that movie. People today are still terrified. My mom saw that movie when it first came out, and to this day, she will never watch it, doesn't even like when I talk about it. So to have a movie that old that still affects people like that today, there's something to be said for that.
Well, I think it really hits people if they're religious, because that movie is a really... I got to see that on the big screen again a few years ago, and it struck me what a kind of a humane film it is. What wonderful character work William Friedkin at the cast and Blatty as the writer came up with for that. It's shocking and blasphemous, but it's got such a deep core of human feeling to it. That's a great one. I saw a message come up. Jaws is another favorite. I love that movie.
Oh my God, yes.
My girlfriend and I, we both love that film. It's probably, just in terms of being a great work of filmmaking, arguably the best horror film ever made. Just in terms of the characters, still some of Spielberg's best work with actors ever. So that's up in the top 5 most likely. Jaws is another one.
Well, I think Quentin Tarantino even said that he feels Jaws is probably one of the greatest movies ever made, as far as when you think about a movie aspect and going to a theater and watching a movie, may be the greatest movie ever made. And I can understand that argument of his. And also with Jaws, that was basically a situation that we got a great movie based on everything that went wrong with that movie. Because remember, the shark didn't work. Yeah. And had the shark worked, they would have used that much more. But because the shark didn't work, we got to see a lot more of Brody and Quint and Hooper and stuff. And that, to me, is what made the movie.
Yeah, well, they talk in the documentaries about they had all this downtime, so they got to sit around and kind of figure out stuff. Like a lot of that dialogue is improvised. You're going to need a bigger boat. That was an improv line. So, but yeah, just in terms of the craftsmanship and utilizing the community on Martha's Vineyard, you have all these great kind of characters they discovered on the island and cast in small parts in the film. There's that great documentary, The Shark Is Still Working. That's
My friend James Michael Roddy made that. Yes.
Yeah, I've seen
one
that.
of the best documentaries on any film I've ever seen. And I love that he tracked all those characters from Martha's Vineyard and interviewed a lot, because a lot of them are not even credited on the film, amazingly.
That's right.
I don't know how that happened, that all these people with speaking parts never got credit, but it's so cool that that, and also a book called Jaws Memories from Martha's Vineyard, which is a must-have if you're a Jaws fan. They both tracked down all these Martha's Vineyard folks and got them to tell their stories. So, that really adds to it also, that sense of community that the film brings up. So many horror films don't really seem to be taking place in the real world, sometimes intentionally. And Jaws really feels like you're in a real live community with all this activity and all these people going on. And then the shark comes in and disrupts everything. And it really, that's one of the things that's great about it. Just that whole meeting in the town hall where Quint makes his speech, but you have all these other little characters sitting around making their own little comments on everything. There's that woman who says, I don't think that's funny at all, Detail
is
the film.
Is the reward going to be paid in cash or check?
Yeah,
I remember that. All right, well, we only got a couple minutes here left, but so can you have any words of wisdom, any advice that you could give out to, because we have, like I said, we have a lot of filmmakers, writers, actors, actresses, and stuff watching this podcast. Any advice that you could give them on their efforts and, maybe to push them along?
Again, it's what I said before, the films that break out, I feel, are the ones that really do something new and that really show kind of a different side of the genre. And I would suggest that filmmakers ask themselves, well, what scares you? What is something that you find frightening? And it could be the real world or something else, and find a way to convey that in a movie. A lot of these films like Night of the Living Dead and Texas Chainsaw came out of the chaos of the late 60s, early 70s. There's a lot of kind of metaphors for the stuff that was going on in America right around that time. Or just Halloween, which is about the basic, the fear of the boogeyman, that guy that might be out there. Or the Blair Witch Project, which is fear of the dark, the fear of getting stuck in the woods in the dark and not knowing where you are. Just elemental stuff like that. So, find a subject and an idea that really scares you, something that may not have been addressed on film before. And that, I feel, will help a movie really stand out.
Excellent. Great advice. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Anything else, Otis?
No, I'm good.
All right. Once again, Mike, I can't thank you enough for finally joining us. I mean, I've been a huge fan of yours for many years. We really appreciate. Do you want to tell anybody where they can find you?
I'm on Facebook. Just look me up there. I'm a Luddite. I can only handle one social media at a time. But you can also, my writing is on the Rue Morgue website and in Fangoria and Rue Morgue in print. Also Delirium magazine in print. And and I real quick, I wrote a novelization for the movie Nightmare last year for Severin Films. I may have another novelization coming. There it is. I may have another novelization or two coming in the next couple of years. So keep an eye out for those as well.
Outstanding. Thank you again. Thank you for your contributions to the horror genre. Like I said, I follow you religiously online, and please keep those pictures and stuff coming, brother.
And keep up the great work you're doing too, man.
Thank you very much. Okay. Take care. We'll talk again soon.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Take care. All right, brother. Another great show. We could have talked to that guy for hours. I mean, he is a wealth of information, all the stuff that he does and he's involved in. I mean, like I told him before, I live vicariously just watching everything that he posts, and I read him in Fango religiously. Fango is still my favorite magazine, and we're not trying to compete with Fango here, obviously. I look at us as kind of like the minor league, hoping that we're going to be writing about the filmmakers and stuff that started out. And then they'll be featured in Fangoria one day and say, "Hey, remember when they were back here with the Junkies?" Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's right. All right, brother. Anything else you want to say?
No, I don't think so. Just want to thank everyone who joined in the chat. What are we looking forward? What are you looking forward to 2025?
2025. Well, I just put out little post about the movies that we've got coming out here in 2024, and hopefully that's just going to be a stepping stone. Now that I've got Indie Horror Junkie and I got people like Otis and Amy with me and stuff, I think 2025 better look out.
Look out.
All right, guys.
And look out for the magazine, the
Absolutely.
new issue, the 13th.
Absolutely.
Your eyes out for that. And the Film Fest. Don't forget Indie Horror Junkie Film Fest. Get your submissions in. You got till the 31st of this month to get them in for Mistress Mary's Festival in October 26th. So you better get on the ball if you want to get in that one. But
let me say one last thing.
Yes.
Dean Blackwelder, who's been asking us questions and stuff like that. Right behind me over my shoulder over here, you'll see a familiar tank. Okay, that's a prop that he made from Return of the Living Dead back there that's being well guarded by Chucky and this little critter dude. Reach out to him. He could make you one too. You heard it here.
That's right. That's awesome.
All right.
I got to give me one. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, guys.
All right. Next week we have, I believe, Ashley Hargrove coming on to chat with us, actress, producer, writer. We're going to talk little marriage bites. Till then,
we'll see you next Wednesday.